Great, welcome everyone. Nice to see you all on this afternoon conference. The weather's terrible in Southampton, so if you are in Southampton, it's a good thing that we're meeting online and not in person to give ourselves a break from the rain. And hopefully the storm and the thunders won't affect our presentation too much today. My name's Paul Woodman. So I work for a church in Southampton. There's a couple of initiatives around homelessness to it, but I'm not a big player in the world of homelessness, but I've offered to help convene this street support group over the last few years, which we've got some panelists on here today that will speak and present some of the work that we've been doing. But across that panel with this representation from the City Council, from hostels, from voluntary services, and between us, our approach from street support is that it's not one person's responsibility, but that it's a team of us that is committed to a vision where Southampton is a city where no one needs to sleep rough or beg. And so that's a commitment that we made back in 2018, a charter that we formed underneath that about ways that we would work together and not against each other, but we would work collaboratively to help reduce the numbers of people sleeping rough and also to make people's lives better who are homeless. And so we've been meeting formally like this for the last 4 and a bit years, and things that we said that we would do, we have actually done. So since we started in January 18, we've set down a list of things that we would do, and we've done them bit by bit, including making this formal partnership around street support, which takes that collective responsibility for tackling rough sleeping in Southampton. So very big welcome to you. If you're not familiar to Zoom, then welcome to Zoom, and we'll do our best to do things. Our panelists are signed in to be able to speak and to present. Rebecca Handley is from Go Southampton, is very clever on the technology, so she's going to be in charge of all the slides to go through. We've got representation today, speakers that we've invited in to help, because as we look to try and do things in Southampton, we also need external help and feedback and thoughts from other cities. And we've gained a lot from other cities as we've been doing this the last few years. And we're pleased today to have Caroline Roundhill speak to us, who's the rough sleeping advisor for the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. So we're privileged to have you with us, Caroline, and you haven't had to brave the South Coast storm, which is great. We've also got the head of homelessness, the service lead for that from the city, Maria Byrne, speaking, and the Rough Sleeping Initiative coordinator, Simone Gleed. And we meet together as a team to look at objectives, look at what we want to try and do, at least every term, sometimes every month, to try and work on things. And we've got a few other people, Paul Leppett, who works with us on the street support admin, making sure that we've got an up-to-date list of services. One thing we first talked about when we first met in 2018 is that very few people knew what was going on in the city, that some people had a snapshot of what was happening, but no one had an overview. And our street support app and website, if you've not been on that, streetsupport.net/Southampton, gives us that overview. And then we have Sanjay Mal with us from The Big Difference, which is making a big difference across the city in terms of food provision. And I won't steal Sanjay's thunder, but he's got a lot that he's contributing into the city, so we wanted to hear from him. We wanted to have an update on Move On accommodations, particularly hear from Dan Pooley with the Hope Into Action franchise, and Trevor Pickup from Society St James. We've got a little video that Solent have made for us, we're going to play in a second, and the students at Solent University and the university have been very supportive of this partnership since we began. We value them, and they've given us their time for free to make videos for our street support social media and to raise the profile of everything that's happening. And then we're also pleased to have Jade with us from Street Vets. I know we all worry about the pets on the street as well as the people, and so we'll have an update from Jade. And then closing words from Mike Harris, who's leading the city council team at the moment. So he's the acting chief executive. And Rob Kern sends apologies on the day. He was going to close from us for Southampton Voluntary Services, but he's unfortunately unwell today. So I'll close in his absence. So that is us. Very big welcome to you. We'll probably have more people join as we come along. If you've got questions, then do ask them in the chat. If we can't answer them during the chat, we will capture them And if you put your email in there, or if you email us, we will get back to you with any questions that we raise. We want to try and give today an overview of where we think we're at with Southampton rough sleeping, as well as Caroline's perspective on how Southampton is doing in the country and the bigger picture of what is happening in there. But a really exciting thing that Rebecca has been leading on is a campaign called Change the Way You Give. And our Solent University video was focused on that, that people can, rather than just give to a person individually on the street, they can give to some of the charities that are around and make a real difference in people's lives. So we'll start off just by showing this little video made by our friends at Solent University.
So just to give you a quick overview about the Change the Way You Give campaign, these are contactless donation points that are available in West Quay, the Marlins, Tudor House, Sea City and the Central Library. And it's encouraging people to donate contactlessly to local causes, local projects. So working with local agencies that support rough sleepers and deliver kind of lasting change and support for individuals that are sleeping rough. We're always open to ideas on what can be funded through this contactless giving scheme, and as long as it aligns with our vision, where Southampton is a city where no one needs to sleep rough or beg, and there's an email address if you've got any ideas of what projects can be funded. And ultimately what we want to do is encourage people to give to these local projects that are directly benefiting genuine rough sleepers in the city, and making sure that it goes to those that are genuinely in need.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. So that is a really exciting scheme, and obviously people aren't carrying cash much these days, so having that tap to donate facility is really great, and that's been worked on by Go Southampton and also by Southampton Voluntary Services, so we're grateful for them. Today we have Caroline Roundhill with us, Caro for short. She's a rough sleeping advisor at the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, and she advises local authorities and their partners on how to meet the government's objectives to end rough sleeping and to see it reduce year on year. So, Caro, we're delighted to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time to think about our city and what you could speak to us today. We're grateful to have you with us. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. What a great video. I really enjoyed that. I'm worried now I'm not going to be nearly as slick, so apologies for that. Thank you for the introduction and for inviting me along to the conference today. It's really brilliant to be here and see all the different partners that come together through street support. Can I just check, can you see my video? Is that on screen? I know the slides are up. Yeah, all good. Lovely. So, yeah, as Paul said, I work for the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. We have a team of rough sleeping advisors. The team started back for 4 or 5 years ago when our RSI, Rough Sleeping Initiative funding, first started. And basically the idea was to draw people in from the sector, so from local authorities, from third sector organisations with a background in working in rough sleeping. So I have a background both in local authorities and working in charities, myself delivering homelessness rough sleeping services. So yeah, absolutely our role is to oversee the RSI funding, the bids, the delivery, etc., to support and challenge local areas around reducing rough sleeping, and also to be a bit of a conduit between local areas and the civil service, which can sometimes seem quite distant. I've been working with Southampton in this role for the last 3 years and seen a lot of the amazing work that's been happening here. So it's be really good to have a look at that with you. If I could have the next slide, that'd be great. Hopefully we'd all agree that this is the case, that no one agency or organisation can alone solve rough sleeping. The importance of working together really can't be overstated. Again, why something like street support is such an important organisation to be tackling rough sleeping. So different agencies obviously bringing different approaches and have different toolkits, but we're all working towards the same aim, essentially to improve people's lives. Street support, as I say, is a fantastic platform to bring together such a variety of stakeholders to work together collaboratively and to change those lives. I would say the local authority is absolutely central to the work, as I'm sure you're all aware. They hold a lot of the funding centrally. Certainly a lot of the funding that comes via us from DLUC. So I would say it's absolutely vital to keep those communications open with the local authority, to provide feedback to them, to enable the voice of lived experience to be heard by the local authority. Providing that data is always really key as well. And by giving all this information, it's working with the local authority to help shape those services to be as effective as possible for people who are rough sleeping. So I have heard a little bit about all the collaborative work going on through street support over the last 4 years, and over the last 2 years, since the pandemic, it's probably, like most other places, stepped up more than ever. If we could have the next slide, please. The way that services and organisations and groups and individuals have worked together over the pandemic really has been quite incredible and a real privilege to see over the last couple of years, and Southampton's certainly no exception to that. And there really is no doubt that the efforts through Everyone In saved lives. You're probably aware that there was a study published in the Lancet that estimated that nationally 266 deaths were avoided as a result of this work from people experiencing rough sleeping. That's 266 deaths that were avoided. So, you know, this amazing partnership working is something I'm sure none of us want to lose. And with the determination and focus, great things have already been achieved, and there's so much more that can be achieved to work towards that vision that you've so well articulated, that no one needs to rough sleep or beg in Southampton. Next one, please. So, a little bit cheesy, this slide, but I did want to pause and just say thank you. It's easy to sort of recap, oh yes, all this hard work went on over the last 2 years, but it really was quite incredible. And I know it wasn't easy. It took a huge amount of hard work and time and emotional energy right across all sorts of different partners working in this area. And of course, it's not just the work, time and energy given during the pandemic. I'm aware that many of you will have been delivering services long before we ever heard of COVID-19 and will continue to do so. And some of the work that you will have been delivering has been funded by the Department of Levelling Up and through the RSI funding stream. So I wanted, on a slightly more personal note, to thank you from DLUC for delivering that work and for your patience as we sometimes have to manage delays centrally. Wanted to slip that in as well. Next one, please. Thank you. You anticipated it that time. That's great. So I wanted to reflect just on some really simple data that I have for Southampton. As you can see, there's been a dramatic decrease in the number of people rough sleeping in the city from between 2020 and 2021, pretty much halved there. I know we can sometimes seem kind of fixated on the numbers, but I do not forget that, you know, every one of these people is an individual whose life has been impacted by the services and the support that's been delivered. So I've highlighted on this slide as well how this reduction in rough sleeping compares to the rest of the southeast region and as England compared to England as a whole. So you can see where Southampton's sitting there. Secondly, and it's interesting, you'll be coming on to talk more about move-on accommodation later in the conference, but I wanted to highlight the move-ons achieved in Southampton. So this shows that basically the number of individuals that moved into settled and supported accommodation since the pandemic began. And as you can see, a big proportion of those that have moved on across the southeast region were in Southampton. And we keep kind of tally tables in terms of success rates and what's being achieved nationally. Southampton is consistently in our top 10, as it were, of areas with the highest move-on rates. So well done everyone who's involved with that. And I know it's one thing to for people to move off the streets. It's another thing entirely to ensure that move off the street is sustainable. So all the work that goes on around that move on is so important. And just in terms of data as well, to let you know that we'll soon be publishing what we call management data. So this is data that is submitted to us centrally from all local authorities every month. And when this is published, it will give everyone the opportunity to kind of compare and contrast your local authority with regional and national trends. So do keep an eye out for that when that comes. So in terms of the DLUC approach, we still have the manifesto commitment in place to end rough sleeping. Again, very much fits with the vision, street support. We've been working a lot recently on what that actually looks like in reality. What does it mean to end rough sleeping? And working on the definitions with stakeholders. A really key one there has been the Centre for Homelessness Impact. At the moment, what we're looking at is to end rough sleeping to mean that we get to the point where rough sleeping is prevented wherever possible, and where it can't be prevented, it's rare, brief, and non-recurring. And to achieve this, we're working with local authorities on 4 pillars that we see as being really key to successful reduction in rough sleeping. Thank you. So this is a very civil service diagram. I do not have the skills to put together such a diagram, I won't claim it. But this basically illustrates the 4 pillars that we're talking about: prevention, intervention, recovery, and system support. And every local authority that applied for RSI funding had to complete a self-assessment for the latest bid. And part of that self-assessment was to look at each one of these pillars and to review basically where they were in terms of delivering these 4 elements and where the remaining gaps are. So, I mean, in general as well, a lot of the focus over the last few years has been on intervention, i.e. that crisis intervention on the street and helping people to move off the street. And very much what we're hoping to see as we move further towards ending rough sleeping is a bit of a shift of focus away from intervention and more of a focus on the prevention and recovery, so fewer people are rough sleeping in the first place and fewer people return to rough sleeping. So these self-assessments that local authorities have done will inform ongoing delivery plans and will be part of the review process of RSI funding going forward, measuring outcomes, successes and areas for development. A key part of the planning, and hopefully a lot of you will have heard about this, will be work with the targets priority group. Not great language, but basically this is a group of people identified by the local authority, hopefully in conjunction with many of you. So people who have rough slept for long periods of time, or people who have repeatedly returned to rough sleeping. It's because of those reasons, that long-term rough sleeping or returning to rough sleeping, that we've asked for a particular focus on these individuals to increase their chances of leaving the street for good. As we all know, again, multi-agency wraparound support is likely to be really key to those sustainable outcomes. And I expect many of you are already involved in that work. Next one, please. Thank you. So some of you will be aware that well, MHCLG, as it was then, released a national strategy. It was published back in 2018, and work is currently underway on a new strategy. So you can see from the slide here that Quite a few other government departments are contributing. Again, that thing, we can't do it alone. DLUC can't do it alone. We need Department of Health and Social Care, DWP, Home Office, MOJ, etc., to come to the table. Key themes that will be looked at in the strategy, building on learning from the pandemic, how the 2 billion funding that was secured at the spending review will be spent, including through interventions like RSI, the Homelessness Prevention Grant, and the Rough Sleeping Accommodation Programme. It will be looking at the supply of affordable and specialist housing alongside the right support. There will be attention given to transition points, so like prisons, hospitals, leaving care, the role of health systems, police and job centres, the role crucially of the immigration system, and it will look at support for this sector through training and capacity building. And also we'll be looking at how we can continue to support faith and community groups with their important work and contribution to it. That's just a little sample of what will be involved. There will be more to it than that. So looking forward, we will soon be formally announcing the RSI allocations for each local authority area for the next 3 years. And this is the first time that we've had multiple years funding for RSI. So it really does represent a fantastic opportunity to plan and to embed models and services. One of the principles of RSI funding is that local authorities work with voluntary and community sector and their local communities. That's embedded, that's formally in the letters that go out with the allocation announcements. Other funding streams will of course impact on this area's work as well in Southampton. I know locally Southampton's received Rough Sleeping Accommodation Programme funding. I was trying not to use the acronym there of RSAP because it's just very irritating, to bring on new units of accommodation. And there's also been public health, drug and alcohol funding that is relating specifically to people rough sleeping. Lastly on this, I really wanted to ask, to put it out there to everyone who's a member of Street Support, of how the RSI team at DLUC can best support at this point, and really what is useful to providers, groups and stakeholders. So for example, our national conference is useful. It's something we tend to do as a matter of course. How useful is that to people? Would it be more useful to get linked up with other cities with similar demographics and challenges? Or is it a mix of both, or is it something entirely different? In short, what would be most helpful, do you think, of what we could do centrally to support stakeholders who are involved? And right at the end of this presentation is my email address, so feel free to jot that down and contact me directly if that would be useful. So it does feel like it does to me anyway, it feels like we're at quite a pivotal moment now in terms of rough sleeping after so much has been achieved over the last couple of years. This 3-year funding has just been announced. Southampton's made great strides forward. And I really think it's a good time to kind of review that partnership working in Southampton and think about what is it that's working and that we want to keep. I think it's also always worthwhile asking what's no longer needed or could be done differently. I imagine this group will play a really big part, and I would really encourage a frank and open review of where we are, where we want to be, and what those challenges are and those opportunities as we go ahead. So, and certainly as well with the RSI funding, although it's 3 years funding that we're about to announce, there's going to be flex built into that. So hopefully we will see demand changing and the environment changing as we move across those 3 years. So we very much wanted to make sure that we could review and flex that funding as we go forward and as the situation changes. So make sure you're feeding into that as well. So the last slide is just my email address for you. And I think we were going to open up to questions.
You're still muted, Paul.
Sorry, thank you, Carol. I was listening patiently. But thank you for your praise, and thanks for everyone in Southampton. Someone in the chat has just mentioned, you know, is it right for people to receive thanks when it was a strategy? They've put here, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for all the partners to take credit for everybody, and maybe it was that everybody came in by their own volition because they finally had an offer of single rooms. So it's just a comment from someone who's attending today. What do you think to that?
Yeah, I get your point. That's a really interesting one, that actually it was the opportunity that perhaps hadn't been available to people before. So completely get the point that you're making. I would say that it also took a huge amount of work from various services to make that opportunity a reality. And I would stand by my thanks for that.
Thank you. Yeah, but feel free to put comments in the chat or to question. We can come back to things towards the end as well if you have got other comments to make. But thank you very much, Caro. That was brilliant. Thanks for the overview. And it's good to know that Southampton's got some extra funding coming in to the city as well. The other numbers, so people often say that the numbers are low. There's another question come in. Is that due to the pandemic? What are the numbers today? And what has been done specifically for prisoners being released from prison?
The numbers, I mean, are we talking nationally? Are we talking Southampton? Nationally, they have reduced massively over the last couple of years. We see trends. That hasn't necessarily been a linear trend down, and as we go into summer, we see numbers fluctuate. Just Southampton, please. I wouldn't be surprised if Southampton saw numbers fluctuate similarly, but I suspect people from the local authority can give you the most up-to-date sort of situation for Southampton. There's a huge amount of work also going on around prison releases. As I mentioned, that's a part of the strategy, the national strategy going forward as well. But again, the representatives from Southampton will probably be able to give you more detail on that local response.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I've seen a few more questions come in, but I'm aware Maria and Simone will speak now from Southampton. Some of the questions might be answered. If not, we can come back to them tomorrow afterwards. But one of the questions in there was what the main causes of rough sleeping. So I don't know if Maria and Simone, if you want to take that on. But thank you, Cara, again. And I'll hand on to Southampton Leeds, who are fine people, Simone and Maria, just to take us through their presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We're really happy to be here today, and there's been a whole lot of close working over the past 12 months between the city's homelessness unit team and the Rough Sleeper Initiative projects within the city. We thought we'd jointly present to the conference this year. I started in Southampton in November, and I'm the service lead for housing needs and welfare.
Hi, I'm Simone Gleed. I'm the Rough Sleeper Initiative Project Coordinator for the City Council, and I'm on a secondment to the city. The next slide, please. And the one after that. Thank you. Okay, so quick catch up from last year. The COVID challenge services throughout the year with ever-changing regulations, risk management, strains and requirements, services positively to every element and to reduce risks of infection. We managed to secure a house for the purposes of COVID isolation for COVID positive sleepers, giving them a safe place to isolate. And obviously also the opportunity to engage with support, housing options, substance misuse services, as well as being supported by communities. Vaccination programs have continued with pop-up clinics within services, services and wide-sharing retail walking vaccination clinics available throughout the city. The most recent clinics held at the Homeless Day Centre did 90 vaccinations in the past few weeks, with first, second and booster vaccinations delivered. And this has obviously been possible to good partnership between houses. I've been very fortunate over the last have expanded our array of outreach services working with rough sleepers and can now include substance misuse, housing and support elements. And this team is coordinated to ensure that the avenue is explored to find the right solution or support for the individual on the street.
You're a little bit patchy.
Last winter, the city had a one-off pot of very short money to help support the UK nationals in Southampton. I'm not sure what more I can do. I've switched off the video, so that's as good as I'm going to get, I'm afraid. Maria, if you're better, do you want to just talk through these? Maria?
Sorry, I'm experiencing technical issues. Could you go to the next slide, please?
Thanks very much,
Okay.
Tim.
Okay. So last winter, the city had a one pot of very short-term money to help support the non-UK nationals in Southampton who are in the process of making settled status applications and awaiting Home Office decisions. This cohort are now not entitled to benefits from the public purse. And so that there are really, so there really are limited options for this cohort. However, despite challenges around a suitable location, we utilised the funding to work with 6 individuals in an assessment centre and achieve the following results. So as you can see on the slide, we've got 3 developed CVs for job applications, 2 took part in work and voluntary positions, 5 registered with GPs, 3 access mental health support, 2 have identified move on plans. So small steps, but really big steps in that work, and that was a really useful project. Next slide, please. During the past year, using RSI funding, the city commissioned Homeless Link to explore the data we have available and identify routes into homelessness. The reasons behind this, and probably most importantly, where we have gaps in knowledge and what we need to know to be able to respond adequately and effectively to homelessness in our city. The following slides gives a little more of the details from the report. So Homeless Link were commissioned to look at the drivers of rough sleeping, looked at decision-making, commissioning, planning, future bids and funding applications. Next slide, please. So I think this might touch on what was asked earlier on, reasons for homelessness in the city. So using the Southampton City Council data for a period during the COVID pandemic, they identified release from custody with no fixed abode as a high driver of homelessness. But also we were not able to identify the driver behind a large percentage of homeless on the streets. Was this down to how we record information, the questions we ask or don't ask, or other reasons such as pressure on services during that particular period of time? Next slide, please. So this chart here, this reflects data from the Homeless Link report derived from the period of November 2020 to February 22. And you can see that over 20% of people were housed with family or friends prior to homelessness. And we know that the COVID pressures will have driven a number of those individuals to become street homeless. And as you can see, there are other sort of drivers there. We've got social rented and supported housing as another reason people have come from settled accommodation, private rented sector. So it really shows the impact COVID's had and that during that period of time. Next slide, please. From the same period of time, 65% were found secured accommodation for over 6 months, but 20% disappeared after presenting to the local authority, reflecting the transient nature of homelessness. This sometimes will be people that have just lost contact, or maybe they've found their own, sort of resources, maybe staying with family. So that, as I said, the slide shows there sort of different, sort of 20% contact was lost. So very sort of a really good high percentage of secured accommodation. Could I have the next slide? Okay, so the street homeless prevention team based within the council identifies people that are rough sleeping or at risk of rough sleeping in the city. As you can see, the number of single homelessness applications went up by 1/5 when compared to 2020, but we have managed to reduce our core of rough sleepers by a significant 59%. The partnership working between the city and providers with regards to the RSI projects has been significant in supporting rough sleepers into accommodation. And with 3-year funding ahead, we hope this can be sustained. We have a well-established housing pathway set in the city that falls under the housing related support contract that includes intensive support hostels through to semi-independent living in supported shared houses. These contracts have recently been retendered, and the new contracts are set to start in July 22 and will include the first Housing First project in the city. The next slide, please. Bear with me 1 second. My slides are out of order. Okay, the city has also commissioned a new housing related support contract with the emphasis being on client needs. As part of this, a new project, Housing First, has been introduced to the city and will work closely with landlords, adhering to the Housing First principles to secure long-term accommodation and support for those for whom existing services have been unsuitable to end their homelessness. This project will work with both adults and young people. In other commissioning, there has been the creation of a new post of hospital discharge worker to ensure that those who are homeless or in insecure housing situations, when they arrive in hospital, have a planned discharge with appropriate support and housing identified, thus reducing the numbers being discharged to the streets. I wanted to reflect on some of the work that the RSI services have been doing during the pandemic period and have this time focused on the RSI intensive floating support team. They're a small team of only 2.5 full-time equivalents, but the work they do is crucial to ensuring that those that have a history of rough sleeping but are in their own accommodation now do not return to the streets and are supported to remain in their homes. This can be extremely challenging with complex cases to support, safeguard and establish a level of stability with them. As you'll see, the age range that they have worked with is very wide, with challenges such as mental health, rent arrears, care needs, substance misuse issues, physical health challenges, unsuitable housing with vulnerabilities that have led to their home being cocooned. In addition, there were eviction processes rolling with tight timescales being applied to establish a working relationship and effective change that meant these individuals could remain in their homes. Huge amounts of safeguarding, partnership working and liaising with landlords to try and stop the eviction and create a level of stability for these individuals. So intensive floating support, as you can see, nearly half of the clients the team work with have had their needs ascertained and suitable ongoing support was established, allowing the team to withdraw. 10 clients were found to be unsuitably housed and moved on was arranged for them. 2 who had only financial issues had these resolved with repayment plans being established and benefits reviewed. 6 were closed after they determined that they no longer needed support from the team, and only 4 clients were actually evicted. That's 7% of their caseload, meaning 93% were able to remain in their homes or were found a more suitable home for their future. A remarkable achievement for such a small investment. Okay, moving forward. So moving forward, we hope to maximise on the experience and success of the partnership within the city, because as a city council, we cannot do it alone. And it's only with the partnerships and the providers that this actually works for Southampton. We want to build on the data analysis work that we started and embed the benefits of the RSI services in the city. And next slide, please. Have you got any questions? And I'm sorry that was a bit rushed. Okay, so a question from Val. So 6 months, Val, is literally just one of our performance indicators that we record in homelessness. So if someone, for example, is under a relief homeless duty, then we can relieve their homelessness with a 6-month tenancy. That's just the minimum that is sort of a standard, what we'd call settled accommodation. So it doesn't mean that they have to leave that accommodation after 6 months. It just means that's the minimum that we look to cause a sort of a settled tenancy, so they could live there potentially, depending on what sort of accommodation they're in, for a lot longer than that period of time. Staying with family and friends is still homeless. Yes, I agree. It is still an issue. I think, you know, it's often called hidden homelessness, isn't it? Around people that are staying with family, maybe in overcrowded situations. I think that, you know, that's one of the main reasons people come through to the council as homeless. It's one of the top 3 reasons, and that includes families across the whole sort of cohort of people that we see.
There's just a question there, Maria, from Joe Ash. Nice to see you, Joe. Just asking about the different needs of men and women and how we see that changing in the future.
So when we see people, we will assess what their support needs are. And I think what Cara was saying earlier about data is really important, because if we're not collecting the data properly, and we ask when we're doing a homelessness assessment, you can imagine you're meeting a person for the first time. We're asking a lot of intrusive questions. And sometimes it takes time to get that trust with someone and to gain that experience, and also for them to, you know, trust us. And that's really, I think, where we need to capture sort of a person-centered approach, and being able to identify those, you know, the support needs at as early opportunity as possible. And that is down to, you know, having those good conversations with the clients that we are seeing out there.
Great, thanks, Maria. Thanks, Simone. I think the weather probably affected the internet connection, so thanks for everyone's patience. Your owl's making me tilt my head, Maria, but I like the picture. Thank you for that. We're going to do a little bit more work. I think our next conference, we want to look at that housing first concept and how it's rolling out in the city. We just thought it'd be a bit too early to do it today. So next time we meet, we'll try and talk about that. We thought rather than congest today, we'd bring it into another conference or meeting, but it's an exciting concept to look at. So again, do look into that and talk to people about that idea before next time. I'll hand over to the other Paul now, Paul Leppett, who's behind everything that you see online and behind today's conference. And thanks, Paul, for all your work with Rebecca for organising today.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. As Paul mentioned earlier, the first conference was back in January 2018, and we got people together, and one of the first actions out of that was to get the website set up. And the reason for that was that most people that were there in the room weren't aware of all that was going on. They were aware of parts, but nobody had an overall view. And so the website was set up as a central resource for information about services in the city. And we've currently got 28 organisations on there and 56 services listed. And we managed to achieve getting the website set up within a few months. And the reason for being able to do that in a short time is that the team in Manchester that had originated the website were able to give us our Southampton pages and set that up in a really good time scale. And they continue to support what we do locally, and the the website is now in 33 locations across the UK, so it's been growing, and the network that is emerging is great, with opportunities for sharing with other cities and locations. And there was a recent conference on digital inclusion which had some really helpful information, and we've been able to share that across the city. In terms of the website, we've got our Southampton pages, and the web works on finding help, either people who want to find information or want to give help to needs in the city. And on our Southampton page, there's a video about how the partnership works, and there is also the charter that you've just seen up, and that is the link to the charter, which was agreed back in September 2018, and you're able to if you're a new organisation wishing to join, pledge your support, and we can set you up on the site. The way we set people up is each organisation has its own sign-in and is able to do its own admin. I work behind the scenes helping people set up and clearing up any issues. Over lockdown, I've been kept busy trying to keep up to date with the service changes, but that's starting to settle down. But I'm always would like to know if there are services that need updating or that are slightly out of, have changed, so that the information needs updating. And one of the things we do on the website is try and publish good news stories. And I've had a look, and I've not done one for a few months now. So if you have good news stories about what's going on in the city, do send them to me, and my email address is there at the bottom. Contact me at southamptonstreetsupport.net. And I think that's all I wanted to say, really. The website has been working very well. Hand over to Sanjay.
Right, thank you very much, Paul, for inviting me to this to give a little chat. I'm very passionate about what I do in terms of the food, and if I just start a little bit of history about the Big Breakfast. The Big Breakfast was set up about 14 years ago at Above Bar Church, where we primarily gave breakfasts between sort of 10 o'clock till 11:30 every Thursday, 50 weeks a year, from the church. So people came in off the streets, homeless, vulnerable, anything lonely, and they came in, and that kind of grew from sort of around 7 to about 100 over a year period, and we've been running it for 14 years. And I think essentially they weren't primarily homeless there, but they were just people that required friendships, just chatting, community, just the stuff that we all need in the city, you know, some place where people can go and just feel safe. And that was perfect. And because Above Bar's right in the middle of the city, it's a great location for people who are rough sleeping, if any, there to come in. So that grew, but then of course COVID happened, and basically everything collapsed. So we have a situation now where everyone's inside. There's poor homeless left out on the street struggling. And to be honest, in Southampton, there are so many great groups that help with homeless, not just here. They're smaller organizations that care and love people and basically are there supporting them all the time. But there were several groups out there. We were one of the groups helping. And of course, there's no money, there's nothing, there's no food, there's nothing. These people are struggling. And then Paul Woodman came to me and sort of said, you know, how do you fancy, you know, providing lunches for them, you know, at 7 days a week from Above Bar, because we had the facility, and together with Southampton City Council, who were also great, and we kind of put this together. So Paul Woodman was kind of putting it together with the council. So we did the lunches from Above Bar. sort of every day with a team of people. Woodman and the council did the evening meals and provided that. And all these 55 people or so were in the 3 B&Bs across the city, and they were fed and looked after, and at least they were safe and fed and watered. So that was great. And there was another hotel that I was helping out in the city that had Portsmouth candidates that the council had put into somewhere near the avenue, and we were helping them as well. So there was a lot going on. And obviously there's, what was it, the Love Southampton helped coordinate this. So it became a problem. So there was not just the homeless stuff, there was other people who couldn't gain access to food, other communities. So I think Love Southampton actually pulled together Above Bar, which was the big breakfast between the Big Difference, Southampton City Mission, which was Duncan, and Nathan from St. Mary's Church to coordinate food across the city. And that worked brilliantly. And as this was going on, lots of leads came into me from various people about food, and it was coming in at a rate that no one could cope with and they didn't know what to do with. But I was sneakily taking it into Above Bar with the John Risbridge's permission and storing it there. So we were getting like 300 boxes of Pringles, you know, thousands of tins of tuna. It was all coming in, but we didn't know what to do with it. But actually with Woodman and Southampton City Council and a number of great people in the city who kind of do know what they're doing, we could coordinate that. So that's kind of where the Big Difference sort of came from. So there was all this food, and what's happened since then is that this food's continued to come kind of my way. And because people think that they know, I know what I'm doing, which I clearly don't, but you know, you have to pretend. But the point is, there's a lot of food that is available, and actually most people don't know what to do with large quantities, short dated food, long dated food. We have storage issues, etc. But again, I have to thank Southampton City Council, in particular Sarah Crawford, who helped me in the big early stages. She's always under the radar, great person in the council. Jason Murphy and his team, again, brilliant. And they've given me this building in Woolston, which I'm operating a lot of the food from. And kind of there's so much, all I can tell you now is that there's so much food coming in, it comes into the Big Difference. And then, so what we've got now, we've got 40 plus organizations, donors. For example, it's Fair Share, John Lewis, UK Harvest, Rotary, Get Here, probably every supermarket now we're collecting and getting it. And we're only a small organization of volunteers, but the project is huge. And I'm actually funded by my own church. So no one is paid, we're all volunteers. So Above Bar Church are funding it and backing it currently. The council are providing the building, and then there's great people in the city who are helping me kind of strategically look at things. So we've got 40 plus donors sort of giving all this food. It comes in, and now we've got 85 communities, and at peak we had 10 schools, because there's a demand for the sort of the poorer families in the schools really struggling. So, you know, and we're helping food banks, we're partnering with the NHS, Southampton City Council, and there's a huge number of people coming in and accessing this food. We have volunteer drivers still, not as many, but it's generally huge and massive. And all I can say at the moment is that those leads have just got bigger. I learned all this from Paul Woodman, by the way. He taught me about networking, and he taught me how to network, and he's done a good job. But the problem with networking is that you get so much coming in and you become kind of the top guy or the top organization who need to deal with it. So now we have all this food. Sometimes it's not great, and we're helping with the Ukraine crisis as well. There's lots of things, but my concern is always our own city. And there are so many good people in the city, so many. I mean, to be honest, the list is endless who want to help and do things. We're helping care homes, rest homes. We're helping all the sort of school projects, everything, everywhere where there's a need, we've got the food. So I think what I'm trying to say is that this is probably the biggest opportunity Southampton's ever had. And I suspect we will take this to another level. So currently I'm talking to depots, Iceland depots, bigger people, farms and stuff who have surplus food. I'm talking with food distributors who are giving me stuff as well. And they're all talks. And I've got the Welsh Dragon's Den interested in propping this up. So it's a massive project, and in my head, and I may be very wrong, I'm pretty sure that with the homeless stuff, that will solve itself, and that's looking great. The stats look great. But with the food stuff and the pandemic that we're going to have in the next year or two with regards to bills, if we have this food source, we will be able to help so many people who are going to get marginalized and struggle with food poverty. And there's going to be other poverties, but I know we can help with the food poverty. But I have to just thank all the people, a lot of the city leaders who have helped me think things through, and also all the volunteers that do this, because they're just an amazing team. They do all the work and I take all the credit. So it's always like that. They do all the hard work and I take the credit. But I just want to thank the volunteers, the donors, and everyone that's contributed to this project. And I think the Southampton City Council are coming on board. We're helping with vaccinations, as was mentioned earlier. I think we're vaccination champions as well. So we're trying to get that out to the unvaccinated, and things are just great. So even though things are bleak, I actually believe that we will be the city's leaders in food redistribution. So this is not like what Duncan does, which is food projects. This is redistributing food that would go into landfill. So we're saving it and we're getting it out. And to date, we've given out £1.3 million worth of food in 2 years. And that number, to be honest, I could multiply that by 10 if the city allowed me and gave me the structure and infrastructure. So yeah, thank you to the council and all the people involved and all the volunteers. Yeah, you're amazing. Thank you. And now I'll pass it over to Dan Pooley, another one of my friends, and Trevor Pickup.
Thanks, Sanjay. Yeah, it's great work that the Big Difference are doing, and it is making a big difference. And I think it is, as you say, going to be really key going forwards with the current economic crisis. And actually, as we look at move on accommodation, that is part of our challenge. There is, with the increased costs around fuel and around food, there are challenges on people being able to maintain tenancies and stay in accommodation. Hoping to Action, for those of you who don't know, is a national charity. Began about 12 years ago, and the guy who founded it, Ed Walker, was recently honoured in the Queen's birthday honours this year. So he's award-winning, but the project is as well. And back in 2018, when we had our first homelessness conference and gathered all our stakeholders in the city, one of the things that probably came to light, really, aside from all the projects not really knowing everything that was going on, was probably a bit of a lack of move-on accommodation. There was a bit of a bottleneck. People getting into hostels fine and being supported there, but then not being able to move on easily. There was also probably some challenge around where churches fitted and the contributions that we played. So part of my role, whilst I run the Hope Into Action franchise in Southampton, I am part of the leadership team along with Paul at City Life, and recognizing that, you know, churches, they have a heart for people. They want to demonstrate love to people, and particularly those who are vulnerable and in need. And so often churches will be out and doing kind of soup runs on the streets, but feeling like we wanted to be able to do more. And the thing that I think attracted me to Hope Into Action is that half of their mission is to house the homeless, and the other half is really to engage churches to play their part in housing the homeless. So if we could just have the little stats up on the screen. We've, as a project in Southampton, we opened our first house in September 2020, so less than 2 years ago. We've now got 4 houses opened, and we are moving towards our 5th at the moment. So 1.3 million seems to be the magic number, but we've had 1.3 million pounds worth of investment into property since 2020, which for us as a small charity is a big thing. But it shows that there is a real heart and a drive out there to make a difference, and for churches to play their part. Our fifth house we're working towards is going to be opened hopefully September kind of time, but certainly before the end of 2022, and that will be to house women in particular. There is a need certainly in the city for that. In chatting to the Booth Centre, that they were telling me recently that a third of their tenants that they've got there are women, and they're struggling to find places to move them onto. So we're hoping to play a part in that. Our latest house that has been opened only since the end of April, beginning May, is for those recovering from addiction. And just a little story from there. You know, the two guys that have come in and that we're housing, they've obviously got difficult pasts. They've been in addictive behavior, stuff that hasn't really helped them. They're now currently staying free from those addictions. Long may that last. But one of them in particular, he during his battle, particularly with alcohol, his relationship with his daughters began to break down. He's got young daughters, and because of his addiction, he wasn't able to see them regularly, and the relationship with his partner was quite strained. Since moving into our house, he's begun to rebuild those connections with his kids. He's had them to stay in a managed way, and he's beginning to rebuild something of that relationship that was lost. And part of I think the premise for Hope into Action really is not just about providing secure accommodation, but also looking to rebuild community and family and support around people. Most people who have become homeless may have multiple issues, but probably somewhere in the past there'll be some trauma, a relationship breakdown, some difficulty in life that probably could have been overcome had they have had supportive, positive community around them. And so part of what we do is seek to help churches in particular provide some of that. Churches have been building community for many years of diverse groups, and so should be well equipped for this. So in the last 6 months or so, we've opened one of our houses in partnership with another church. So it's not all just City Life, which is good. And we are in conversations with a few other churches about opening future houses, and particularly for those who've got no recourse to public funds, which again, I know is another challenge within the city, with some of those on our streets not having access to those public funds and therefore limited support available. So we're working towards that. And we're also finally just pleased to say that you know, we welcomed our first tenants in September 2020, but some of those tenants are now ready to move on to independent living. And so we are working to find accommodation for them and to help them move on. That is currently a challenge in the climate we find ourselves in. There's not a lot of council accommodation available for people. We know that there's a lot of people already on that waiting list and bidding for properties. And accessing private rented accommodation is quite challenging at the moment, with lots of landlords asking either for guarantors, which many of our tenants wouldn't have, or wanting 6 months rent in advance, which is obviously a bit of a non-starter for our tenants. So we're trying to work with some of those landlords to come up with some solutions for how we can help people move on and hopefully do so well. So that's where we're at. I'm going to hand over to Trevor. Trevor's probably got a lot more to say because Society of St James is doing wonderful work in the city and probably a lot more than we are.
Thank you very much, Dan. And thank you for all the work that you're doing as well. So I'm Trevor Pickup. I'm the Chief Exec of the Society of St James. We're one of the housing charities and housing associations working in Southampton in partnership with other people on this conference. We've recently retained and received a number of contracts from Southampton City Council, so we're going to be managing a wider range of accommodation and supported housing And as a result of that, we're very aware that many of our residents, once they've settled down, need to be able to move on into more independent accommodation. So next slide, please. So roughly speaking, we're going to be housing about 200 people going forward. And if an average of those are ready to move on every 6 to 9 months, then the numbers of move on units that we need starts to get quite big quite quickly. And so our plan is to try and acquire more property to enable that throughput. So on the next slide, our funding model is that as a housing association, we can get grants from Homes England. This is the funding model for all housing associations. If you're a big housing association, you get a huge grant and buy a field and build 250 homes. We're on a far smaller scale than that. So we're buying individual properties, often ex-student houses or other sorts of HMO. And as I say, we get 45% of it as a grant from the government, and then we take out a mortgage to cover the rest. And then once the property's open and the residents have moved in, some of the rent that they pay helps pay off the mortgage. So our plan is to acquire 20 properties in Southampton this year, and they will be a mixture of self-contained and ensuite facilities. We've done this sort of thing over the last few years, and our plan is to carry on doing it over the next few years so that we can have a steadily increasing stock of move-on accommodation in Southampton, which means that people in hostels and other supported housing have got realistic chances of moving more into more independent accommodation. That's it from me. Thank you very much. I think you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got it. I was fortunate to go to the Police and Crime Commissioner Awards last month, and Society St James Volunteer won an award, and the video was nice, I thought. So as you've just spoken, Trevor, I thought we could segue that in just to applaud the work of Society St James, but also Craig Hayler, who'd been through a turbulent time and is now reinvesting as a volunteer and making a difference back into this world. So he's got a little award thing that was shown at this event, and he's got a very swanky award as a result. So congratulations to him and SSJ, and here's his little thank you video for everyone to see.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the award. It will only continue to sort of reinforce all the work that we do, myself and other colleagues as well. Just kind of really does sort of mean a lot in terms of recognition. We do what we do because generally get something out of it. But in terms of receiving this award, I was just happy to be nominated, to be honest. And I never thought the award would be like this for a start. And sorry, I can't be there on Friday, ultimately. So in terms of what I do, I get something out as well. Don't get me wrong, I will put time and effort into it. But this kind of role, to get the most out of it, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to want to make a difference. It's just about being consistent and ultimately about being positive. So if they know that when they see you, if you're consistent, positive, eventually they kind of do trust you and they know that you're there to help, basically. I think one thing that helped me was being here on a volunteer basis. I could be here kind of pretty much all the time. So whereas house staff might be busy because I only do one problem at one time. So sometimes I'll have the ability to be here all the time, and lads were kind of, because I've been through this situation, they can relate to me. So I've experienced some of the stuff that they've experienced. So sometimes they might feel more comfortable speaking to me rather than other sort of house staff. So I found that, especially last summer when I was here sort of 4 days a week, lads would come out, maybe if it's 5-10 minutes and have a chat, but that 10 minutes was so beneficial to them, and it helped other staff kind of in there with the client sort of progression in the house. I think as well, one thing that's helped me is just having the time to just sit and listen to someone. A lot of the time when you sit to listen to someone, they find their own solutions, but it's having that time to sit down, let them sort of express their feelings and emotions, and you could see it was literally a weight off their minds, just talking to someone who kind of knows where they're coming from. And I think the listening thing is something we all take for granted sometimes. Just literally sitting down 5-10 minutes. They'll find their own answers, aren't solutions. It's just, don't be afraid to just, even the awkward silences. Sometimes you can see people thinking about what they just expressed. So it's out there kind of thing. And the amount of times lads have said to me, oh, thank you for that. It meant a lot, which ultimately is what we're here for. I can't thank Mark, my manager, enough for nominating me for the awards. And again, a big thank you goes out to Mark, because if he hadn't took a chance on me sort of 2 years ago, I wouldn't be standing here now with this award. Thank you to all my other colleagues, Laura, who runs the house, for letting me kind of take free rein in doing activities with the house.
Great. Sorry, yeah, sound cut out a little bit there, but thank you as well, Trevor, and for that update. I know there's other dates that we could get from people, but just wanted to highlight a few. And then today we wanted to welcome Street Vet in as well, who are working with us. Jade has joined us, so we're going to hand over to Jade, and that'll be our final presentation. But I think, like, coming through today is just the strength of volunteering and wider partnership work from across the whole city. So as part of that, it's great to have you with us as well, Jade. Thank you.
Thanks for allowing a last minute entry for me to join, because I only just heard about it. So thank you for letting me participate. So yeah, I don't know if anyone knows about Street Vet, so I'll just give you a really quick intro. If you go on to the first slide, that'd be great. So basically, it started with 2 vets in a backpack. So one of them would be me. The other was my co-founder, Sam. And we went out with a backpack in 2016 to offer free accessible vet care to pets belonging to those experiencing homelessness. And something happened at that point where we realized there was this massive need. And as a vet, I had not really thought about it properly, like where people would be able to access vet care. And it's not about actually being able to go in the doors. It's about being confident and having the mental sort of, I guess, awareness and not have anxiety about going into a veterinary practice. So we found that by having literally people on the street with a backpack going and treating people with their pets where they felt either safe or in a community that they knew, that we were able to build trust up. So we are now in 17 locations across the UK. We've got over 400 vet and nurse volunteers that go out regularly. And we have a team in Southampton. So when I heard about this conference, I was like, I want to kind of see if we can just let everybody know that we're here in case you have clients, service users that could benefit from our help. Next slide, please. So what do we do? Basically anything we can from a backpack. So essentially anything that can be done in a consulting room, we'll do in the street. So we'll vaccinate, microchip, we'll give out normal veterinary first opinion treatment, we'll take blood, we'll sample lumps, we'll test urine, we give out essentials, all that kind of stuff. Anything that we can't do on the street, we will then fund to be done at a network of practices that we work with. So if diagnostics are needed or hospitalization, surgeries, then we will fund that to be done. All of the clients that register with Street Vet get a 24-hour free phone number that they can contact us on. We usually give it in a tag that goes on the pet's collar. But the big thing that, again, I go back to me being really naive quite a lot in the creation of this charity, but I did not have any idea that, obviously I understood all the benefits that the pets bring to people, but I didn't realize that they actually created quite a lot of barriers for them too. And the main barriers that we see when we were talking to our clients is them being able to go and look after their own health. So go to hospital, go to rehab, do any of these things because they won't leave their dog. And then the other biggie for us was that only 10% of hostels accept pets. So yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, so that was a kind of moment in which we were like, well, what can we do as a charity who are providing veterinary services? What can we do to maybe speak to hostels and see if we can help them and find out what their reasons were that they were not open to having a pet-friendly policy. And yeah, there was a competition, there was funding, and I found out about it on a Friday and it had to be in by the Monday. So I had a busy weekend submitting it, and I'm delighted to say we won £41,000 to create a accredited hostel scheme. So we launched that during the pandemic. And so it took a bit of time to kind of get off the ground. But if you go to the next slide, I'll go through what we do, what essentially it is. But the main thing that we found from speaking to hostels was that the staff have no idea how to work with dogs, and why would they? You know, they're already working in a fairly kind of high intensity, high pressure situation, and then, you know, you're asking to throw some pets into the mix. So one of the main components of the accredited hostel scheme is staff training. So we have an online training course. It's 7 modules that the staff can do, which educates them on all sorts of things, mainly to do with interaction safely with pets, you know, pet behaviors, also like what's safe to feed a dog. It's and all the things that Street Vet basically do to help. So we ask if people are going to have an accreditation, the aim is that at least 1 member of staff per shift would have done the course. Okay. The other thing that we do is there's a lot of education materials that get sent to that hostel. So they get posters which will go up on toxins, like what you shouldn't feed a pet. They'll get posters on postures, like about other members in the hostel and how they should be approaching pets and when not to approach them. We do like a pre-accreditation check. So we visit the hostel to make sure that we think it's appropriate to have pets. We then help them decide how many pets they should actually house. And the other thing, we do their dog policy and contracts for them. So again, we've seen hostels that do accept pets, but they've maybe not thought of all the eventualities that can happen. And sometimes on speaking to hostels, they've just had a bad experience. So one bad experience might be that, you know, an owner ended up in hospital and they ended up with the dog shut in a room and they didn't know how to get it out. They didn't feel comfortable approaching it. So what we do is, you know, the contracts are written, we help with the dog policies. Obviously, all the pets can be Street Vet registered, which means that all their veterinary needs are taken care of. We provide pet essentials, so any pets get delivery of food to the hostel every month, and they also get like a pet pack, so when I'm like a bed, toys, leads, all that kind of stuff. We set up a telemedicine platform in the hostel. So basically, again, this all started from experiences that I've had with people in hostels, but if they have a proper emergency, a dog collapses in a hostel, then it's a case of, you know, they can literally go on a video chat with the vet immediately, get advice that the vet will then either say to them, you need to be seen, this dog needs to be seen immediately, which Street Vet then arranges, okay? And we also have pet transport that we set up with each hostel as well, and we have an account to fund that. Or they'll just get given advice, and in which case, you know, they don't need to be seen immediately by a vet. So that's the the telemedicine service. We work with Animal Law, which is a charity that supports people specifically in that area. And one of the things we've created with them, I don't know if you guys see this like we do, but that a lot of our clients don't really know what their rights are when it comes to their pet. So if they get arrested, they're like, you know, they just sign something and the next thing they know, the police have got their dog and they have full control over it. Or if they get sectioned, you know, what then happens to their pet. So we've done like quite a good information pet health book that goes to all the residents that are in a Street Vet accredited hostel. And then the kind of last part, I guess, is to do with the boarding. So if you have a client in a Street Vet accredited hostel that has to go into hospital, then we will board the pet for them. And we have agreements with hostels all over, kennels all over the UK. So that is in a nutshell what we do. If you go to the next slide, I think you just have to press it and all the things come flying in. So that gives you an idea of the stuff that goes out. So the pet health record, we've got all these posters that go up around the hostel. We have signage that goes around the hostel saying, you know, dogs allowed in this area, dogs not, dogs always on the lead, that kind of thing. We do introduction posters for the pets so that they can actually be part of the hostel, so to be introduced with a photo and also talk about that individual pet, whether it's doesn't like men or it doesn't, you know, like being approached in a certain way. So it's just trying to make the whole thing inclusive, so that the pets are part of the hostel, and the staff, the ones that we have that have become accredited, we've got, as I say, we only properly got this off the ground outside of COVID, so probably in the last 6 months. So we've got 11 accredited hostels now, and we've got 35 onboarding at the moment. So in essence, it is, I don't know what your situations are in Southampton with hostels and how many are pet friendly. I know we've spoken to 2 Saints that we work with, and we've helped before, but the outreaches that we provide are going to be every month. So obviously I can put details of where they will be, then that's where you can direct clients to get registered with Street Vet. And obviously if any of the hostels or people that you know are interested in becoming a Street Vet accredited hostel, it is free to accredit for the first year. And then it does hold a fee, because we've basically done it for free because we want people to understand what's involved and see the benefits of it. But then it's £1,000 a year from there. But if there's multiple sites, it wouldn't be. But yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jake. Someone was asking if there's an emergency number in the chat.
There is, but it's only for registered clients. So any client that registers with Street Vet, they will be given the emergency number, but it's not a public number, because we just don't have the staff to facilitate something like that, but the clients all get one.
Brilliant, thank you. If you heard any snoring there, it was my dog, not me, honestly. It was he nods every few minutes. So thanks very much, Jade. And would love it if you'd consider being a partner with us with Street Support, and so take a look at the website and see where that works. And
yeah, no, I've got it written down. I will.
Great. And Paul Leppert is very willing to sort of advertise, you know, put up any service requests that you have as well. So thank you very much for that. Brilliant. Well, that was a high note to end on of all of our contributions, but we're going to finish with closing words from Mike Harris from the City Council. So thanks for listening, everyone, and over to you, Mike.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Well, it is actually, in many ways, as you said, kind of inspirational session, isn't it? Quite a challenging topic often to talk about, but isn't it great to, I think, reflect on success? I think the headlines were, over the last year, 47%, you know, reduction in homelessness, top 10 performance by the city, and those successes are achieved by people coming together. And for me, that's been the kind of overwhelming message that comes throughout, that people have really come together, and not forced by the city council or the agencies. They've come willingly together to address a societal challenge, and that's just been really reassuring, because, you know, the challenges are there. Although I was noting, if Sanjay's got a problem with storing boxes of Pringles, my teenage son can probably help him out with quite a substantial proportion of those. But nonetheless, that's something to talk about another day. I think my other reflection is a bit about data and how important that becomes while we're talking about people, and it's very much a human-centric topic. Data is really important because it helps for us to learn. It learns about what really the issues are, what the underlying challenges are. It helps us justify and secure funding in many ways. We've got to think about securing that, so it's good to be gathering that. And the challenge, I guess, is to make sure we're gathering sort of similar forms of data. I really loved the video. I think that's just a great way to communicate, because whilst I think reflecting on data being really key, communications about the challenges, about how we solve problems, how we're being successful is really important. And a video is a good way to tackle and reach new audiences, but also just the concept of giving in a different way is great, to embrace technology. Even though I'm well into my 50s, I'm now one of those people that doesn't really carry money around with me. If we want to support people in the right way and in a positive way, it's a really positive method for doing that, and trying to engage at the biggest audience as possible. I think that really struck me as a good communication tool, and you know how the website can bring people together, identify opportunities, and hopefully also share learning about some of the real challenges we have got in the city, but how we're addressing them. I was absolutely gobsmacked, and the numbers on the food distribution, just incredible. And how do we? I guess that's you start with a great idea, and you're overwhelmed. So kind of felt like that's where you're going to get to. But people across clearly the city, but far beyond, are benefiting from just the huge amount of voluntary effort that goes in. And it feels subsequently the challenges now, I suppose, that the huge progress that's been made over the last year or two, particularly with things like, you know, multi-year funding from government. Isn't that fantastic to see? Really rewarding. But the progress we've been able to make, that you've made together with colleagues during COVID, maintaining that and maintaining the energy, because I know it's a huge amount of emotional and physical energy that goes into these things, and people have reflected on the impact of the cost of living challenges that are coming, and I think that's going to really probably upscale the challenges for homelessness and people struggling with their bills and the causes of homelessness coming forward. And how do we then connect and engage with those people at risk? And it was good to see some forward-looking kind of approaches about prevention and early intervention, because that's where we need to get to. And the challenges equally with move on accommodation and across a variety of groups. So those challenges are there, but my ultimate, I suppose, reflection is that there should be a huge amount of confidence that those challenges can be met or mitigated to a huge extent in the city, just because of the successes everyone has had. So I think from the City Council, just a huge thank you, a huge appreciation. If we were in a room together, there'll be a huge round of applause. There'd be just you know, warm words. And so I know sometimes that warm words aren't enough, but on this Zoom meeting is all we can. It's great to hear from colleagues on calls that people in the City Council are stepping up to the challenge and doing our bit. We're committed to doing our bit amongst all the challenges we have. So we're committed to doing that. But I think everyone should be able to give themselves a pat on the back, give themselves a round of applause, because we should have confidence that the great progress that's been made in the last couple of years will continue. So my heartfelt thanks to everybody, to you, Paul, for bringing it together. You said you weren't going to be the top-notch host. I think you've done a fantastic job. So really appreciate everything you've done, but also to everyone on the call and the people they work with that are fantastic. They do, and you do, to support people who are homeless. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mike, and thanks to everyone. This is an active partnership, so if you've got questions or comments, do let us know before we sign off. And also, if you'd like to join us, I know a few people in the chat have said, well, I want to be part of this. Like, we really do want new partners. We're not a clique or a closed group. We want to gather people that care about people that are sleeping rough and care about their situation, their welfare. And so do join us as partners and make your pledge to be with us. And also to share things like the videos that are made. You know, we're really grateful for Solent for making that video. It had something like 6,000 views in that first week that it was out. But again, the more organizations that are sharing the message, the wider that message goes. So we do need your pledges and we need more partners. So do help us gather those. I think particularly businesses in the city as well, just seeing how they can partner around this work, because they often see the result of rough sleeping as much as everyone else. So I think that is us. That is it from us. Just say a big thank you. I was going to mention Southampton street passes because Sanjay mentioned about the lunches being made during the week, but during the weekends, I know street passes made a massive effort to make sure packed lunches went out to anyone who was left out on the streets during lockdown. So thank you to our Southampton street pastors, who are Mayor's charity for this year, one of the Mayor's charities this year. So well done to you. And thank you to everyone else. Thank you for that commitment to partnership, working together and not working against each other, but working collaboratively. And thank you to our keynote speaker, Caroline, for joining us. We appreciate you being with us and encouraging us as well. So we'll be in touch again about a next update. Maybe we'll be in person, maybe the weather will be better, and we'll meet again, as the Queen said. So thank you very much.